assign it to. Hello, everybody. I was right in the middle of a different sentence. So, happy last Thursday. Happy Thursday.
Yes, Thursday.
Yep, here we are again for another episode.
Indeed.
Yeah.
With a new tagline.
Yes. Last Thursday.
Every other Thursday.
Exactly.
I think that's going to work out much better.
I think so too. And, you know, for people who've been listening for a while, when we first started this show, we were kind of we're like, let's just do it, right? So we started it and we allowed it and are still allowing it to be ever changing.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that that's one of the things that's awesome about it.
Yeah, I like the flexibility of it.
Yeah, and it's casual. And we're coming to you guys with subjects that we don't typically cover on our other shows.
Right.
So that's really cool. Although I can see I already know I'm going to start blending
Oh, yeah.
this stuff into the healing home because it's such a
should.
huge part of everything and a huge part of who I am. And it was a huge part of my healing journey to learn a lot of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, I know, for sure. We've spent many hours talking about all of this stuff over the years. So
yeah,
it just makes perfect sense that we would get around to it at some point.
Yeah. And I want to ask everybody out there, how is our sound?
Yes.
Do our mics sound staticky? Do they sound clear? Just let us know what they sound like.
I did make a couple of adjustments today.
Okay, cool.
So I turned them down a hair on the Zoom, and then I turned them down, or I actually allowed it to do automatic volume adjustment on StreamYard's end.
Oh, okay, good.
So hopefully that does the trick.
Yeah, hopefully.
Because, guys, I heard the audio on, like, one of the recent shows of ours. You're just, like, casual, or you're, like,
I was kind of just scanning through things, re-looking at stuff,
and I heard it, and I'm like, wait. We sound not great.
Yeah.
I was like, the audio does not sound super hot. So please let us know if it works out.
Someone says turn them up. Someone says sounds good to me. Sounds very clear. All right. Well, cool.
Okay.
Sound is low.
Sound is low. Gotcha. What's up, guys? We can see you in the chat. So
howdy,
thanks
everybody.
For hanging out already. So if we need to turn things up, if we get a lot of comments like that.
Yeah, we'll see.
But hopefully you guys could adjust things on your own. I'm curious if it's quiet, if that's because you guys are on a phone or if you guys are on a desktop, things like that. So we'll sort it out over the next few minutes, we promise.
Yeah, we will. So we'll let you guys know what we decide.
And then obviously, just you can hold it up to, there you go.
Yeah.
Something like
I'll
that.
hold it closer to my mouth.
Anyway, it's nice to see everyone here. We are obviously talking about the moon.
Yes.
Let's get to the drinks because I'm excited to have. Is there something caffeinated going on here
yes,
by chance?
There is.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a bit of caffeine.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's good with that? And then we could do some slide stuff, and then we could do, we could check out the chat.
Yeah. Well, today we're drinking what we have been drinking for the past few mornings with a twist. So this is Dandy Blend with Blue Lotus Chai, coconut creamer, and I put just a dash of rum in there for some flavor. I don't think it's not enough to make anybody, go crazy or anything. But I was like, I think that would be tasty with a bit of rum in there.
Right on.
And so, yeah, we're loving this, and I thought it'd be special
Clink
to have. Oh, yeah. It's like the slightest hit of rum.
Yeah,
it's like so
it's
slight. It's almost like it's like a essence kind of thing, So
essence of rum.
Essence of rum.
How do you think that would do at the bar, or basically any restaurant?
Well, kind of depends on the bar. A fancy bar, that would go far. A dive bar, people be like, essence of rum. I want fucking shots of rum.
Oh yeah, of course.
So depends on your crowd, I suppose. But that's really nice. And I was feeling a little bit of caffeine.
Totally.
All right, so you could turn it up. You aren't clipping, and the audio is clear.
Right. Okay, cool. Awesome. So after these credits, we can make some adjustments.
Okay.
So, but before we do that, I just want to say thanks to all of our patrons. Go for it.
Yeah. So Chance, Binna, Sarah, Liam, Amy, Miri and Hank, Jenny G, Erica Rodriguez, Moonlander, Spoons, Mary, Catherine, Logan, Lily, Debbie, Natasha, Mary Beth, Nausicaa, Stephanie, Jennifer, Charlei, Peter, and Elise, and James. Thank you all so very, very much. I say it all the time. We say it all the time, but man, it makes a big difference having you guys supporting us, it helps us to keep going and doing all these things that we want to do. So thank you.
Totally. And if you want to become a patron, you can do so at patreon.com/thehealinghome. And then my Patreon is patreon.com/Symbolic Studies. And we are streaming to both channels right now.
Sweet.
Just so people in the chat are aware, there's some people chatting on the Healing Home side, some people chatting on the Symbolic Studies side. So if we highlight a comment and you're like, where's that comment? That's probably the reason why. So thank you, guys. All right, I'm going to make a quick adjustment here on the back end. And I am just going to do that. So excuse us if that got any louder. Let us know what that's like for you all.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm going to say hi to people. Let's say hi to people, baby.
Yeah, hello. What's
Hello,
up, Kabir?
What's up, dude?
Nice to see you.
For sure. Then we've got Tattoo Dave, Moonlander 2 in the mix. What's up, man?
Yeah.
He sent us some awesome information the other day, and I just really appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, pertaining to the Process Church and New Orleans. Yeah, got some, and the Discordian.
Oh yeah, Discordianism.
Discordianism. So yeah, really great stuff, and I made my mind churn a bit, and I think that you're onto something, Dave. With the things you sent us. So
and actually, our process stuff has been noticed by a couple of people. So we're going to be doing a show. We're being invited to go on the Occult Rejects, basically, with New York Patriot to talk about the Process Church stuff.
Yeah, I'm so pumped for this because when he was talking about wanting to talk to people about the Process Church but couldn't find many, I was like, dude, sweet, this is awesome. Been wanting to do this kind of stuff for a long time, like talk more openly about all of these things. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be a good one. So we also have, we've got our first guest, too. That's exciting. Flat Earth Hippie. What's up, dude?
Hey,
Sir
Hank.
Yeah, Hank's a good one. Brandon Bonanza. Hello, hello.
Hey, Brandon. What's up, dude?
And then we've got Michelle.
Howdy, Michelle.
We've got Spiritual Anarchy.
Woo!
And then we've got Narciso Sanchez.
What's up?
The Real Spoons.
Ow, ow.
Not to be confused with the fake spoons, guys. Don't get it twisted. Kelly Boyles.
Hey,
Hello.
Kelly.
And then we already mentioned Miri, but she deserves a second mention. Artist Seer.
Yes.
We're
Hi,
gonna
Mary.
be seeing her pretty soon. Might as well just announce just real quick, but we know a lot of people online, some in person, who are going to Flattoberfest in October in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And we are also going to Flattoberfest.
Yes, we made it happen.
Yeah. So
you guys helped us make it happen, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So we're going. Not sure just yet if we're buying tickets to the event.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is there's a lot of people who end up going, and they just go to hang out with people. You know. So when I was talking to Ben Balderson, he was saying that, I don't know, several hundred people obviously buy tickets and they're there for the presentations and whatever, but there's still even hundreds of people who show up and are just hanging out in the parking lot and chilling and stuff.
Yeah.
And so we may be part of that crowd, but we know enough people that are going. It's going to be a good time.
It's going to be great. So
if you guys are going, you can expect to see us there.
Yeah,
maybe we can get something going.
Super awesome.
Marianne, thank you for being here. And let's see here. Family Fun Guy, what's going on, guys?
Woo! Howdy. What's up, Elise and James?
Yeah, much love. For sure. So, Elliot James asks, we talking the moon landings fake?
You betcha.
Yep, indeed. And the timing is so interesting with this Indian thing, with the moon landing. It's funny because we were planning on doing this anyway, and then that was a thing. And then, anyways, we watched some footage last night, which we'll get into it in a second, but I can't believe, are they really trying to pass that off as being real footage, or are they saying that this is like animation, but they're not being very clear about it? Because it's so bad.
Oh, the India stuff?
The India footage.
Oh, yeah, it looks like a video game.
I know. So that's why I think it might be like their simulation.
Yeah.
And they're just putting it out there saying like, oh, no, obviously, this is a simulation, but they're just not saying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
It's so bad.
honestly, I think most normie people that believe this stuff don't need much to be
No, especially
convinced
these
that, oh
days.
yeah, that looked like a video game, so we're still on the moon, we made it. It's just like, what? No.
Right.
So,
Okay. What's up, Matt Moon? Cool. All right. The sound levels sound better.
okay, cool.
Nice, guys. Thank you for just hanging in there while we work all that
We
out.
got a caged reality. I don't know if you said what's up to them.
Oh,
He might be
yeah.
in the
I think he's right here.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, dude. It's open. So I see you in the private chat too. Cool.
Sweet.
Awesome. Right on. So you might have to hang out for a little bit before we get around to you. Thunder Chicken is here.
Hey, Lee.
Oh, sweet. Brandon Bonanza saying over here, hey, Sharon and I did our 100th episode of Oversharing Today.
Dude,
Man.
congratulations.
That's right. You guys should definitely check it out. Maybe you can post a link.
Yeah, you should put it in the chat. That's so cool.
Brianna.
Hey, Brianna.
Sarah G. Mr.
What's
Obvious.
up, Sarah. Mr. Obvious. Love that.
I'm the.
Ooh.
Hello.
What's up?
Okay. Cool. Nice.
And Katrina. I don't know
That's what I was thinking, because a lot of people are going nuts over this. No, that's animation to show the mock-up of how it would land.
Ah.
Right? And so people are running with that, saying that it is footage. And admittedly, I only spent a couple minutes trying to verify, I think. Or maybe I didn't. I just kept on seeing it be just kind of spread around or whatever. But a lot of people are taking that at face value, thinking that it is actually, moon landing footage. Actual film.
Oh. Yeah.
That makes way more sense. But Crypto Cryptid, what's up, dude? Or dudette. Nice. Right. Let's see. Can I make someone a mod from StreamYard?
I think you have to do it in YouTube.
Yeah. Right. Totally. I'm gonna hook Brandon up with a mod wrench real quick. And our internet's so slow, guys.
Yeah, so we'll see how this goes. We could always do it on our phone, too, if we wanted to do that quickly.
Right, totally.
So we can just...
All right, yeah, this is going at a snail's pace. So really difficult for us to do any kind of multitasking here.
Do you have your phone in here?
I do have my phone.
Maybe just do it on your phone if you can, but if not...
Yeah.
For those who are just joining, just to let you guys know, Mario put the links in the chat earlier. We are doing call-ins tonight, so let's hang, dudes. Let's hang out and we'll be respectful and allow let's allow people, as many people that want to flow in and out. Let's do that and. We'll have a good time, because I think with this one, there's a lot of people that have a lot of thoughts about it and have a lot of opinions for good reason. And yes, as Mario was saying, after we were watching that footage yesterday, it's so blatantly obvious to me that it's not far off from so many of these other events that take place that are very much scripted, very much planned for a long, long time. Lots of people involved, lots of agencies involved, lots of money involved, scripts that have been written and are, followed. Very clear that that's going on. And one of the things that I noticed with the footage yesterday was the emphasis on reminding people that they were able to watch it on TV. Nixon at one point addresses the astronauts after they come back and they're in this quarantine cell thing. And he says at least 3 or 4 times throughout his speech to them, oh, people are watching this on television. This was televised. It's almost like he's emphasizing the fact that, don't you forget, we've given you television and you got to watch this from your living room, and you should be privileged. You should feel honored, or something like that. It's very odd. So that was something I noticed.
Yeah, they one of the big things I took away. So what we did yesterday is we watched not the full thing, but there's actually an 8-hour-long video on YouTube where somebody uploaded a lot of the television footage of that day and of the following days leading up to the moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we watched bits and pieces here and there, more of the sort of pertinent kind of scenes, landing on the moon, taking off, coming back, meeting Nixon, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that occurred to me, which I've said this before in this series, is that technology played such a huge role during this decade, the advancement of technology, right? And so some people might refer to this as the technocracy, as like that's really, kind of in a way that technocracy is like the puppet master that controls so many different things and allows things to kind of unfold and happen and whatever. And it's all driven through technology. So it's, we live in a very technological age now, obviously.
Right.
And so it's that this technology has been seeded out to us, strategic technology for very specific purposes, like television.
Right.
So this was the first decade where people really, it was I don't know if it was completely fully adopted by then, but obviously during the 60s, people had, their television screens in their home. They were watching the news, seeing Vietnam, watching the Beatles or whatever, and then also watching the moon landing in very, very, very low resolution, by the way. And so the pixel count for the resolution of television screens back then is absolutely minuscule compared to what most people have in their pockets now with their
yeah,
phones.
that's a good point.
And so huge difference there. So technology played a really big role. The adoption of technology, transhumanism, look what that's giving the world nowadays, And so to me, it just plays a part in all this stuff. They want you to think that you are part of some new frontier. But just to kind of say it just plainly, but I'm sure most people here know that this is where we're at. But the moon landing, to me, it just seems like it's a whole big hoax, right? And so, but it played lots of different, it played out a lot of different agendas, I think. I think that with something that big, there's usually like a multi-layered sort of aspect to it. It's not just accomplishing one big thing. It's accomplishing many, many, many things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it appears as though it kind of went off without a hitch, actually. But there's so many anomalies with it. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Should we get into some of our information here regarding the moon? Should we take the call or the moon landing rather? Or should we take the call, you think, for a few minutes? What are you feeling?
I think we should take the call.
Okay.
Yeah, let's take the call for a few and then, I think...
Because I think a lot of our natural opinions are going to come out anyway.
I think so, too. I think just not worrying too much about, going off notes. Let's let this one flow a little bit more and...
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Boom.
All right,
Okay.
Cage. You're up.
Hey, Cage. I am unmuting you.
We're going to...
Okay, so I have added you. What's up, Cage? So all you have to do
Hey,
is unmute
guys.
yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you, man.
Yes.
Oh, thank you guys for having me on here.
Yeah,
I'm a
you
new
got it.
viewer. It's my first time ever tuning into you. I had a friend that actually recommended this channel to me. I know you guys go pretty deep into this esoteric stuff, alchemy, hermeticism, stuff like that, I believe. Astro theology, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So what I recognize, like I see a bookcase on, behind the lady there. What would your top 3 books in that bookcase be?
Oh, that's
Bookshelf
interesting.
or whatever. Yeah.
'Cause you're interested in metaphysical stuff and all of that. Actually, to be honest, I'm such a reference guy. I really love my symbolic reference books, and I get a great deal out of them. And I'm currently going through a kind of a weekly sort of teacher-student lesson plan with somebody right now. And so I've recommended him a couple of books. And so I'll recommend the same books to you, actually. And one of them would be The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. That really unlocked a lot of things for me because he goes all over the place with symbolism.
Yeah, I've covered that one myself too.
Have you?
It's a good one. Morals and Dogma also. And right now I'm on, have you ever looked into Cornelius Agrippa, the 3 books of occult philosophy?
Yeah, I have that one around. To be honest, I haven't spent too much time with it, but I am interested in his work for sure.
It's pretty good, like especially with that symbology you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. I got it right here. So yeah, this one's definitely a classic, although I can't speak to a lot of specific stuff going on in here because like I said, it hasn't become a thing for me. But in terms of symbolic reference books, there's a book called The Penguin Dictionary of symbols. And for people who are interested in symbolism, honestly, this is like one of the best little books you can have around. It's pretty thick for what it is, and there's a lot of incredible entries in here. And I like the fact that they include actually a few things in this book that a lot of other symbolic reference books do not include. Just more so like their outlook and philosophy on symbolism. But it's by a guy named Jean Chevalier. And so I would say that this is one of my preferred ones. If you're a student of symbolism and want to learn more about it.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for that, Mario. But have you looked into The Initiates of the Flame? I think you'd like that one, since you did mention Manly P. Hall earlier. That's a great one, too, for people to look into.
Yeah. No, that sounds familiar. I don't personally have it around or anything like that. What do they get into?
Symbolism and stuff. A bit deeper.
Nice. Awesome, man. Just curious, do you have any opinion on the moon landing and maybe what was going on there? I mean, talk about magic and symbolism and stuff. I mean, this whole entire storyline is fascinating to break down through that lens.
Well, personally, through my observation and the way I've come to understanding of it, all this stuff is pretty much an illusion. Right? I think it's all formulated through the subconscious mind. Like, for example, in a dream, right? There's a bunch of different characters in that dream, and they feel like they're outside of yourself, but really it's all running off an aggregate or, off one mind, technically. But it feels very separate from yourself, the landscape, the individuals.
Right.
If you know where I'm going with that. Right?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's kind of interesting, too, just the fact that you would even bring up illusion, because the moon itself has so many anomalies attached to it. It's very, very mysterious. And I even have a book right here, speaking of books, called Who Built the Moon? And so this book gets into a lot of different things, a lot of aspects of the moon that are incredibly strange, incredibly bizarre. And so what they do is they kind of are like collecting all of these data points about the moon. And they're saying like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Like, what's going on here with this? Why can you only see one side of the moon? Is the distance they say that it's away from Earth, is that even really accurate?
Right. It's probably an electromagnetic hologram, but it's like a key to the algorithm, right? So it does have an effect on the physical world, technically. Because if you think about it, right, humans are mostly made out of water, and you can see that the tides are affected by the moon, right? Even women's menstrual cycle. So it's like the divine feminine. Or it's like the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, or the two pillars, Joaquin and Boaz in masonry, for example, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so when we were looking at the footage yesterday of the moon landing, what you're going to see is this huge phallic symbol that is the rocket, take off, and it's going towards the moon. It's going towards the night sky. And so kind of like what you're saying, it's just like the sexual symbolism at play is incredibly potent.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a man returning to mother or something like that, the stellar virgin of the queen of heaven, And so to me, it's just like that's so obvious and kind of in my face now. It's kind of strange to look at, actually.
Right.
Well, that's how you hide. I'm saying that's how you hide really great truths, right? You make it so obvious and so in front of your face, and use half truths and send people down rabbit holes. It's very easy to really conceal after, right? Like, for example, if I wanted to hide something from you, it'd probably be like a terrible decision to just eliminate it from all speech and all thought, right? But it would be a lot easier in order to give you a half truth and try to deceive you with it, right? So it goes back to the Hermetic principles of polarity and causation, So like hot and cold, a lie and truth, love and hate, they're all the same thing, but different degrees of the same thing. It's a spectrum or a tonality.
Right. Totally. No, yeah, exactly. That's what I was telling Michelle last night, of just like, well, this stuff resonates very deeply with people because it's like basic sort of symbolic components that are kind of like hardwired or baked into our psychology and spirit and everything else.
Right.
And so one of the things that I was thinking about last night when we were watching some of this footage is, I make a big thing about the world axis, right? And so it's this idea that there's this symbolic bridge between heaven and earth, and people put it in the northern part of Earth. So from the North Pole to the Pole Star, the North Star, right? Polaris. And this world axis, to me, it really is like a fundamental component to like ancient symbolism. So I think a lot of people who are looking into like old world technology, old world culture, and it's like a huge part of the internet now. I think one of the things that I kind of want to contribute to that conversation is the fact that I think a lot of these people had a different understanding of reality, and it was kind of more polar centric in nature. So people who have seen my work over the last year or two probably have heard me talk about this stuff. But the world axis, I think a lot of phallic symbolism goes back to the world axis. So like the tower, the obelisk, as an example.
Yeah, the obelisk and that, yeah.
Right. And so these rockets, they're just like flying obelisks. It's like the new age obelisk sort of thing. And what those obelisks and towers, what they represent is they represent the bridge, like I'm saying, from Earth to the heavens. And so the Tower of Babel story, they're building this tower to get closer to God or get closer to heaven or their own godhood, I guess, right? It was kind of their way of ascending in a way, And so climbing a mountain is kind of a similar sort of metaphor. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. They love using symbology with their quote unquote space crafts or whatever they're doing, right? You look at the Falcon 9, Apollo, all these other ones. It's always related to some sort of a bird, which has symbology in ancient Kemet or Egypt or whatever. It all ties back to it.
Totally. I mean, it's incredible because the point of today's show, I think, is almost like more of a broad sort of thing.
Right.
Or kind of how like the decade led up to the moon landing.
And what else in the decade kind of like lines up with why this happened,
Right.
Why did they choose this decade to do it in 1969? There's a lot of stuff that was going on. It was such a pivotal time that to
they're
me
trolling you.
It makes a lot of it makes a lot of sense, so yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, no, definitely. And so we're not even getting into all the naming aspects of it and things like that, or the dates even specifically.
Right.
Because I'm sure this is where your head's at, but I mean, you could decode the hell out of like every single bit of minutia surrounding this event.
Mm-hmm.
The names of the astronauts, the people who are involved.
You could make it a lifetime study.
Yeah,
to be honest.
The program names, the rocket names, where they launched from, the timing stuff, everything about it.
Right.
I would imagine is heavily encoded, for sure.
Yeah.
What are you guys' thoughts on the Kabbalion by 3 initiates, right?
Gotcha. I think it's
you like that one? It's a good beginner one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile read, and that's what a lot of people say, right? Is that it's a beginner one, and that it's also not real Hermeticism. I can't remember what year it was created, right? But it's a fairly modern sort of thing, relatively. And so I think there's lots of excellent principles in there, though.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I tend to see Mercury everywhere. If you dive into my work, Mercury tends to come up quite a bit for me. And so even with the moon landing stuff, I mean, I was thinking about the mercurial implications of all of this stuff, because Mercury, he's
they
the
call it
messenger of the gods.
the universal solvent in alchemy, right? I haven't really looked into your guys' work yet. Like I said,
no
I had a friend recommend this channel, and I just I went on YouTube and I seen you guys are live and I seen the link, so I'm like, oh, why not join?
That's awesome, dude.
So
yeah.
Well.
So
yeah, so I think we should keep rolling on the moon landing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it. By the way, dude, where are you calling from? Just real quick.
I'm from Toronto in Canada.
Oh, right on.
Gotcha. Right on, dude. Well, thanks for calling in, and hopefully you stick around and listen to the rest of the show here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Cage.
You got it, dude.
Appreciate it.
Take care, man.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Cool. First
All right.
caller.
Sweet. First caller. That was awesome.
That worked out.
Like it. So let's roll into the moon landing. And if anyone else has moon landing stuff that they want to contribute, or have something that comes up that we say or whatever, and they're like, "Oh yes, let's go, come on in."
Totally. Yeah, thank you, Cage. All right, so I'm gonna post the link again.
Yeah, just for people who if you don't feel like scrolling all the way through the chat or whatever.
But you brought up some good stuff, Cage, and one of the things I was going to finish on is that this sacred center sort of correspondence with the world axis, right? So it wasn't uncommon for people way back when to have some sort of sacred center in their village, in their hometown or whatever, in their region. And this would be where people kind of congregated, and this would be like a place of worship. So it also wasn't uncommon to have a temple there, right, of some sort. I think one of the more beautiful sort of sacred center symbols you can have would be a tree, your family tree. So your family tree is a representation of the world tree, basically, right? And so that trunk of the tree is emblematic of the world axis. And so the idea behind the world axis is that it relates to stability, it relates to structure, it relates to tradition, it relates to foundations, it relates to having roots in the ground, right? And so it's stationary the same way the pole star is stationary in the heavens, okay? And so it's really interesting to me that when I saw the rocket launch, and it's on the launching pad, and it has that sort of structure that keeps the rocket upright so that it can take off, according to plan and everything else. I'm like, man, that is just like an obelisk. That is just like a tower or something like that. It's just like a world tree. It's a world axis sort of symbol. It's a phallic symbol,
right?
Which also Mercury corresponds with. And so to me, what they kind of did, whether they knew it or not, is they turned this rocket into a world axis sacred center symbol for worship purposes, and so what they did was they rallied everyone around this sort of structure, and they rallied everyone around this storyline, and they tried to say that this was the greatest feat of mankind. We need everyone's support, moral support mostly, obviously, in order to get this done. JFK talked about how we need to get on the moon by the end of the decade, right? So they got everyone to completely focus on this world axis symbol, turning it into kind of like their world tree, kind of like an obelisk or something along those lines.
Wow, that's a great point.
And then it just launches up into the sky. So it's almost like a technologically advanced kind of transhuman world tree in a lot of ways. And so that's kind of what I saw with it.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of world axis symbolism at play with the rocket itself. And then what's, again, the world axis symbol, what is the main thing behind it? Is that it's a bridge. It's a bridge to other planes. It's a bridge to other domains. It's a bridge to other places, right? The great beyond.
Right.
And so what does the rocket do? It's taking off. It's going to that place, right? So, right on, dude. Thanks, Cage.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. So he just hooked it up with a little super chat here.
Thank you for the super chat. That's the first super chat we've gotten on last Thursday.
I think so.
So thank you.
Yeah, man. That's
Appreciate
awesome.
it.
Hell yeah.
You're the first caller and the first super chat. You're going down in history on last Thursday. What do you know?
I like them.
Nice. I really like that idea of the it becoming the central pillar of this community, quote unquote, sort of thing.
It's like a updated Tower of Babel.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That's what the whole entire Tower of Babel story is all about, is that it was the first civilization after the flood, so it's said, and all of the people that existed then came together, put all of their collective effort into this tower so that they can get closer to heaven or become gods themselves. That is exactly the same symbolism of this rocket.
Right.
They're basically saying, let's collectively support this cause to send this rocket to the heavens, if you will. And by doing so, we ourselves are going to become gods, because now we can actually traverse the cosmos.
Right. And then they were the first to get up there. So that's the story. So then they're like really staking their claim, basically, because then you also have that symbolism.
How do you stake your claim?
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say by sticking a pole in the ground.
By sticking a pole in the ground.
And what did they do when they went up there?
Classic symbol of the world axis.
Right. We all know the American flag got stuck into the ground, and that's like one of the main things about it.
Right.
So U.S. claimed their territory on the moon. You know, symbolically and also, you know, literally and things like that. So, well, they didn't though because they didn't actually do that. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So.
No, of course, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's partly, you know, what's going on here is breaking down the symbolism like that. Real quick, you said staking your claim, and I just want to kind of remind people that when you put your pole in the ground, that's very, very phallic. When you're putting a flagpole in the ground and you're saying this nation is becoming ours, we now own this nation, right? It's like you're putting a penis inside of a vagina, basically, right? And so when a man makes love to a woman, symbolically, it's like him putting his pole in the ground.
Yeah.
It's like you're sowing seeds, basically. So it's like you're breaking the earth. The earth is symbolically related to Virgo, the queen of heaven. Virgo is the queen of heaven and the queen of earth. And so when you're breaking the soil to plant a seed, when you're sowing a seed, the phallic sexual symbolism is on complete display right there.
Right.
The same thing is true when you put a flag into the ground. Right. So it's all very much related. Just like I was saying, it's all like a lot of the sexual symbolism here is just like through the roof. It's completely off the charts when you really decode it that way.
Right. And in the 60s, it was like the sexual revolution. I mean, sex was at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. You had free love. You know, the nuclear family is being broken up. The moms are pissed off and they're turning into feminists, you know, and there's all this sexual stuff going on in the decade of the 60s. Specifically during the time of the moon landing or the hoax event, 1969. I mean, this is like towards the end of everything, you know, so everything was like really, really, really heightened at that point. Everything had been going for a while. But the thing about it, too, is that 67 is when a lot of things started to really peak, though. You know, you had that peak. That is in the book version, that is the summer of love is 1967. And that's when a lot of things were happening. And Haight-Ashbury was just like really, really coming up. And it was before a lot of the major harder drugs got introduced to the communities and things like that. So we're kind of at this like boiling point while the moon landing is happening, while they're advertising all this stuff.
Right.
And it's not far before the Manson murders. So Manson murders happened in August of 69. The moon landing is in July.
Right.
Mid to late July of when is like, I can't remember how many days the range is, but it starts on like the 17th of July and then goes to like the 21st or 22nd or something like that.
I see.
So it's a range or whatever. So anyway, you know, just thinking out loud about that one too.
Totally. That's a good point. Just have to mention Cage Reality is continuing to hook it up with super chats.
Ah, thanks, dude.
So let's get the ball rolling. And then all I do is plant seeds. Much appreciated.
I did see Moonlander had a comment up there that I know we're kind of going back and forth to the chat. Yeah.
So Moonlander says, Buzz Aldrin was allowed to open a representation of the Grand Lodge of Texas on the moon. What? Which would establish Masonic territorial jurisdiction there. Don't know if he actually did. Dude, that's wild. I've never heard of that before.
Wow.
I actually wonder what he did. What's this representation? How did he conduct this? That's very fascinating. I would actually love to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right. Wow. So as we were kind of talking last night, it's just like there's so many different angles to approach this topic.
Right.
Does one come to mind right now, or should I pull one out of the hat here?
I mean, a couple come to mind, but you should just
feel free. Go
for it. I mean, the thing that I think and what I wrote down that you brought up last night is just how all of this stuff is based on a heliocentric reality.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And that to me is a really big one. And it kind of goes along with all of the quote unquote facts about all this too is also based on what NASA tells everybody and what the mainstream is saying. So it's like, oh, the moon is this far away and the moon's surface is uneven. The moon does this, does that. It's like we don't even know. It's all based on lies. I mean, every little thing about this is based on information that's being told to us through the institutions that are serving this to us on a silver platter. So it's kind of interesting to me. So I think like that kind of the root of it being, you know, we're raised, most of us, unless you had parents that were pretty damn hip to things, we're mostly all raised in to believe in a heliocentric model. And so then all of this stuff is all based on the same thing.
It's true.
So I think jumping into that, because that's pretty interesting.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
So the way I tend to perceive things is that if you were to kind of give the overall philosophy of like our education system, what do they stand behind the most?
The globe.
What do they consider to be the most important aspect of our education? How do they frame everything? So if there's a way to potentially label all of the things that we've learned in our education, in public school education, right? Personally, I see a lot of it as being very much in line with heliocentrism. On down the line, from our science, how we look at energy, how we look at the human body, how we view other people, how we view other countries. To me, the through line philosophically with our education system and with quote unquote the system at large is that I think it's very much in line with heliocentrism, or what I kind of refer to now a lot of times is the solar tradition. Okay, so everything is based on a solar tradition here. That's why you're taught about the solar system. So if you go through school and they're having you create a solar system model out of styrofoam balls or whatever, right? You're going to have a huge sun in the middle, and then you're going to have all the planets wandering around it, the wandering stars. And what they're emphasizing is they're saying, hey, this planet right here, the sun, this is the end all be all of everything in your, as far as you're concerned, everything in your reality.
Right.
So everything comes after that understanding, right? And so even when you look at, that's another reason why I love this book right here, guys, is because this book doesn't attribute everything to the sun. There are some books that I have that are more modern, and they're saying that, oh, this symbol, it's a sun symbol. That symbol, sun symbol. These people, sun people. Those people, sun people. Everything's just a sun thing. And that's more of a modern understanding of things because we live in a heliocentric paradigm, essentially.
Right.
And so, so under the heliocentric paradigm, everything is inverted. Everything is inverted from what it actually is. So in my opinion, people have heard me talk about this a number of times. I believe the reality we actually live in might be better described as a polar system, and that a lot of polar symbols were adapted over time and became solar symbols, right? And so under the solar centric sort of perspective, everything is always, and I always struggle on the words to use when I'm trying to explain this point. Everything is external from you. So as an example, look at our energy system here, right? It's illegal to not be hooked up to the grid. You have to funnel energy from an outside source into your home, right? That's what's going on right here. That's how we're lighting these lights. That's how this fan is on. That's how all this stuff is working, is that they basically require by law for energy to be funneled into the home, right? In some places, they don't allow you to even collect rainwater because they want your water to come from an outside source. They want your media to come from an outside source. They want your education to come from an outside source. They want you to depend on experts whom you've never met. They want you to obey the hierarchy of the establishment and everything else. This is a very solar way of looking at everything. A polar way of looking at things is more local. It's more You're more tapped into your own divinity. You're more tapped into your own power. And I think that people from the polar age or from the geocentric age, they had a clear understanding that the sun isn't the end all be all center of everything. Because what you're basically saying then, when you're showing kids the solar system, you're giving them a cosmological framework under the guise of science.
Right.
And so they're saying, oh, no, this is just the modern scientific understanding of everything. In actuality, you're teaching them a cosmology. You're teaching them a religion. And the religion is basically scientism, essentially, is one way of looking at it. Right. It's a very transhuman sort of way of looking at everything. It's beyond human. It's the human is dirty. The human needs to be sterile and clean. And our thoughts are dirty, and we're impure, and we're not perfect, and Mother Nature makes mistakes and everything else. The geocentric way of looking at reality is putting Earth first. It's saying, hey, actually, the end-all be-all, as far as your life is concerned, is the ground that you walk on.
And sorry.
Go for it.
Isn't it funny, though, that these heliocentrics, liberal people, are always about Earth first.
Exactly.
Global warming. Oh my God, you're killing the Earth. But their whole everything, the greenwashing, their whole philosophy that they live their lives by is the opposite.
It's very flawed.
Of being Earth-centric and caring about the Earth.
Right.
So anyway, I had to say that because you saying that it's just like, whoa, dude. They have. That's why it's like it's so unfortunate, but at the same time, I'm grateful that it is the way it is because it really does separate the wheat from the chaff in such a way that once you start to understand this stuff and put these things together, it's so much easier to turn a cheek to all this bullshit that's going on.
Right.
Because it's you see how flawed so many outlooks on life are when it comes from the mainstream heliocentric beast.
Right.
You know? And
also, too, I mean, my understanding is that I think when you really get to the higher echelons of the hierarchy, that the people who are promoting heliocentrism, they're not heliocentrists themselves.
Bingo.
You know, it's for the lower class people.
Right.
Right. And so to me, the way I tend to look at it is when you look at the sun symbolically, the sun wants all of the glory, the same way the demiurge wants all of the glory. The sun wants all of the shine. It wants all of the recognition. You know, it wants all of the accolades. And the demiurge was the same way. He thought he was the preeminent supreme deity in the cosmos. He didn't realize that there was a god above him, which was his mother, the goddess, right, Sophia. And so similarly, in my opinion, I've picked up a lot of stuff over the years, and I have to thank, you know, a lot of the geocentric material that I've looked into, and I have to thank the discovery of the world axis for really understanding a lot of this stuff too. Is that the sun similarly wants all the glory. It wants all of the shine. It wants the most acknowledgement. It basically is begging you to look at it because of its rays and how powerful it is. Now, I have a clear understanding that the sun is not our enemy, right? The sun is not our enemy the same way the moon isn't our enemy or anything else like that. But what's been conveniently swept under the rug is that there's a third thing. We tend to look at just sun and moon and that's it, right? But there's a third thing going on here, and it relates to Polaris, the pole star. It relates to the world axis. It relates to the northern sky, the northern portion of Earth, which if you believe in a geocentric reality, there's something to be said about the North Pole. The poles play a big deal no matter what your cosmological framework is. So if you're a ball earther, the poles play a very big deal. If you're a hollow earther, the poles play a very big deal. If you're a geocentrist, the poles play a very big deal. And then there's the whole idea of, well, what is a pole? What does this actual place look like on a grand scale? Mm-hmm. You know, on one level, I think that we maybe just aren't meant to know here. That it actually physical reality may very well break down, and that it maybe just isn't our place as humans who are living here to have a complete understanding of what we actually live within, right? It's like asking a fish to comprehend the huge lake that it lives within or something, and where its place is in reality and stuff like that. And so we're so in it, can we actually perceive and have a clear sort of conception of like what we actually are living within?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like the idea of the word field, specifically toroidal field. And so I think that we do live in the middle of a large torus field, and it's a nested toroidal system. So the inner portion of the torus field is the world axis, and the inner portion of the torus field, no matter how many torus fields there are, it's still the same. So when I refer to the world axis, if that's at the north, I'm also referring to the same axis as being the cosmic axis, or the galactic axis, or the universal axis, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that under a geocentric sort of polar perspective, things were way more local. You had a more clear understanding of your divine power, and you had a more clear understanding of the spiritual significance of where you actually dwell. In heliocentrism, it seems as though everything is outside of self, outside of your location. So history happens everywhere except for your backyard. Big things happen everywhere else except for where you're at. So we'll acknowledge these people's culture, right? And we'll put it on a pedestal, but your culture is trash. Right. So what it does is the shift from a polar reality, I think, to at some point a solar reality, they cut off the roots. And so they cut off the tradition, and they cut off what makes us really us. And so they cut us off from our past in a lot of ways. And so one of my favorite books that I've read here, it's called At the Center of the World. And it talks about different cultures that had that sacred center, and that meant everything to them. That standing stone that was in the middle of their village, that meant everything to them. They would have given their life to defend, that stone, or that tree, that family tree. And I see that the branches here. What's up, dude?
What's up, Joshua?
That family tree meant everything to them. So if that family tree was chopped down, caught on fire, destroyed, lost, or otherwise, that was the beginning of the end of them.
Right.
He goes through multiple examples of tribes, clans that had a sacred center world axis symbol that they revered, and then another clan coming in, destroying it. These people were lost. They literally were lost. They didn't know how to function. They didn't know their way in the world, because the world axis, it gives you something to revolve around. And my understanding as well is that there's a lot of God symbolism attributed to the world axis. The northern sky has been referred to as God's throne, but the deeper and deeper and deeper I look, it's actually more probably originally attributed to the goddess.
Ah, yeah.
That the northern sky relates to a great goddess who might as well be called Virgo, who might as well be called the Queen of Heaven, who might as well be called Isis, who might as well be called all of these different things. And so I did a presentation called The Lion and the Virgin, right, last week. And I get into the pillar correspondence, or the pillar, and how it relates to the goddess, how it relates to the virgin. And there's so many examples of this. It's kind of crazy. So I think that I think the sacred feminine, I know that's like kind of like it's I almost get self-conscious when I say that now, the sacred feminine, because it's overused and all these other things. But my strong hunch, my kind of updated opinion is that the polar tradition is heavily tied to the primordial mother, therefore the sacred feminine, the dark mother. And when the polar tradition went away, so did that acknowledgement, that public acknowledgement of the great mother.
Right.
In favor of the sun.
Right. And the masculine.
And the masculine.
Right.
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
So that's kind of the big shift that I see over time, is from polar to solar. Right. And so people who watch my stuff, they'll know that that's how I feel.
Right.
So once again, just to say too, that under a heliocentric solar system model, because everything is externalized, because nothing is local, because they don't want you tapping into your own sacred center, because that's another angle of it, is that the polar tradition polar symbolism, it gets you back to your center, right? And they don't want you doing that because that's the most powerful place you can actually go. Know thyself and you'll know the universe,
right?
You know, so everything is externalized. So instead of taking care of your shit here and taking care of this domain that we live within, we're concerned about going to the moon.
Right.
We're concerned about going to Mars, you know,
we're concerned about aliens.
Exactly.
And so it's really interesting that all this stuff is swirling right now too. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. That's awesome.
But you know, that's as you're saying this stuff too, I'm thinking about that because this alien thing now it's like something outside of us is going to invade, you know, all of a sudden now you have everybody believing in aliens when what the heck, you know, how many decades have people been talking about this?
I see a very clear thread between heliocentrism, alien invasion, and germ theory.
Ah, I like it.
And
it's all
theory.
Invaders.
Exactly. It's all invaders. And so your body has a correspondence with the terrain, right? And so under a geocentric perspective, I think terrain theory makes a lot of sense, you know, as like a model to maybe integrate or understand. I understand there's parasites and there's mold and there's things.
Yeah.
Right. But the way we've been sold viral theory and the way we've been sold germ theory, to me, it really doesn't hold a lot of water. I think there's a lot of flaws with it because what they're doing is the exact same thing. It's outside of self.
Right.
So then if everything's outside of self, they're going to create enemies, invaders, aliens, germs, viruses that are also outside of self that can invade your terrain. But what heliocentrism and the solar tradition tends to always undermine is the power of your own vessel as a complete holistic sort of system.
Right.
Right. And so to me, I see these correspondences and I'm like, oh yeah. So when all of the stuff with the virus and whatever was happening over the last handful of years, I'm like, this is heliocentric, solar-centric programming to the max,
right?
In my opinion. And I mentioned the alien invasion thing and how there's this kind of relationship.
You did, yeah.
And even coronavirus, you know, corona, the sun, you know. So, and even just the way the virus looks, you know, it's kind of like a sun with these little pokies coming off of it, little rays or whatever. So, anyway, so I think that heliocentrism sells you on a lot of false sort of pretenses. And when they're showing you man landing on the moon, when they're showing you that man can go to the moon, they're selling you a cosmology, but it's a false cosmology. It's a heliocentric sort of thing. Just to say it out loud, I don't think that you can go anywhere physically like that.
Right.
You can't get in a vehicle and go to the moon or go to the Mars or go to Saturn or whatever. It doesn't work that way, in my opinion. You can go there metaphysically. You can go there after death. You can meditate and traverse the cosmos and astral travel, you know, and there's something to be said about all of that because also too, the first stop, a lot of traditions have said, is the moon. That if you're going to astral travel out of here, you want to stop at the moon first.
Right.
Symbolically. And that the moon is something of a gateway out of here. So it's the first gateway out and then it's the last gateway back in. So under that sort of tradition, which groups around the world have talked about this. So it's not just like in one or two esoteric groups or whatever. There's many cultures that have had a similar sort of understanding. And so it's really interesting that the first place we would go to would be the moon, right? It's kind of symbolically saying, hey, this is just the first stepping stone to get to other places or whatever.
Right.
You know? And so, and it doesn't it make sense then too, that the moon card is like a gateway card, essentially, right? When you look at the artwork, it looks like a gateway. I'm sure most of you guys have seen the moon card. So hopefully it
Not
focuses.
coming in very clear.
You got the idea, though. So there you have it. All right.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, I'll say, now that they're threatening again with mask mandates. So we have more invaders, and India just did their moon landing, and you know what I mean? So it makes it all lines up very well together when you're trying to piece these things together and make sense of it. You know, that we're going into another period of invasion. whether it's going to be aliens or it's going to be another, variant or whatever.
Right.
We're just at the beginning of a new era with it, and it's just been announced today or the days, I don't even know. I just started hearing about it today that now places are recommending masks again, so here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
So let's say hi to the chat real quick, and then we'll get to the branch. What do you think?
All right, sounds good.
What's up, Kyle?
Oh, hey, Kyle.
So Kyle's saying
happy Thursday.
Blurry moon landing there, buddy. Yeah, exactly.
Going along with the theme here.
All right, so I'm going to scroll up a little bit and see what people have said. I'm not going to go all the way because I realize that, that can take a while. All right, so let's see what's going on here. And hello, the new people who are joining us. Susie, Gemini.
What's up, Susie?
Yeah, exactly. There's no lie in nature, right? So we are our bodies, Mother Nature, the feminine Mother Nature, always undermined in the heliocentric reality that we find ourselves in. I would say.
That is very true.
Right. Okay. So Elliot's saying the sun is the devil. That's what he's saying. There's a lot of interesting things to be said about that. I don't personally think that, but there's that's a whole show that we could do. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, without the sun, there's no life. 100%. It's absolutely, completely necessary here. And maybe that's what you're saying, Elliot. Maybe you're saying the sun is the devil and the devil is necessary, perhaps, here. I don't know.
I mean, it all is, Everything that's going down really is.
Right. All right.
I really think, too, the most important thing about the heliocentric versus the geocentric stuff is literally taking people away from their sacred center. I think that is one of the more important things to remember or think about when you're pondering this stuff, because most people understand that, if you're not connected to yourself, if you don't have self-confidence, if you are wary of your own abilities, life is a lot more challenging. And I feel like they want that for people, and they want people to feel like they need to have validation from an external source to speak their mind or speak their heart or feel as though they're important.
Communitarianism.
Yeah.
Communitarianism.
To the max.
Communism.
Yeah.
I see a lot of solar symbolism in those ideas.
Yeah.
So Katrina's saying maybe the pole star is the signpost to a sacred center in the center of Earth. Yeah, exactly. That's how I tend to look at it. It's a signpost. It's not. It's also a signpost to your sacred center. Is kind of how I personally perceive it. All right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nice, dude. Or dudette, whoever's talking here. James or Elise. Aliens equals space invaders equals germ theory. Yeah, for sure. I've long wanted to do some sort of presentation or video about it. I just haven't. But maybe this new variant will inspire me to actually make it. Probably won't put it on YouTube, though.
I think this new variant's going to inspire a lot of things from a lot of people. I was having kind of a thought. I was tripping out about it this afternoon a little bit. Tripping out, not in a bad way, but just like tripping about thinking about what this is gonna look like, because I think that there's a lot of people that wised up from how it all went down. But maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
The other thing, though, is they could step up their game.
Well, that's the other thing.
And what we saw was almost like a preview of maybe some sort of bigger show or grand finale or something.
Yeah, because I think that's true. Because one of the articles I read about it was, they're coming out with a new booster shot. That's one of the whole things with this movement. So within the next couple months, they said there's going to be a brand new booster shot that's going to help you against these new variants.
Right.
And they're saying how, a lot of people haven't had boosters in months. So, there's going to be a new one available and you should get it right away and blah, blah, blah. So there's like a new invasion coming,
right.
Anyway, just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
So beware, I guess, for your parents or family who might not know any better. I know sometimes there's nothing we can do about it, but
Right. Okay, cool. I'm glad. It seems like the invaders thing kind of landed for people.
Oh, sweet. It's a good one.
Gotcha.
Oh, yeah. Mars penetrates, invades, infects, inflames. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
And that's the guy with talking about India landing was brought up Mars too. So now that we got to the south end of the moon, now we can go to Mars, and we always talk about this, but they've been dangling the Mars thing in front of people for decades and decades and decades that we're going to go to Mars and you can live there and all the bullshit.
Thunder Chicken. Think of terrain theory of the garden. Healthy plants don't get sick. When they have the nutrients they need available and in a preferable environment, they don't fall into a state of dis-ease. Yeah, no, terrain theory is kind of a gift that keeps on giving. I don't like to put all of my eggs in one basket. It just makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, and I'm glad we have like an understanding of it because it's really, and especially through the lens of like a G&M.
Yeah.
Is G&M the same as terrain theory? It's
no,
different, right?
It's different, but
there's like a lot of overlap.
There's a lot of overlap, but it is different. Like terrain theorists and German New Medicine people don't necessarily always agree.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of crossover.
Right. Helpful crossover, I would say.
Very helpful crossover.
Awesome. Okay, let's see what... Yeah, that's a good point, PK. The moon is the arc esoterically. Yes, I agree with that. One of the many things it's related to, for sure. So, therefore, it's the arc esoterically, so it's a means to get around, right? It's a ship, and so even looking at the crescent moon, it kind of looks like a little vessel.
Yeah.
It looks like it like can contain something. Yeah, like a boat, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why the moon is the perfect correspondence with Cancer and also with the Chariot card, right? So you're talking about the vehicular side of things, getting in something and taking off and traveling and journeying and everything else.
Right.
And so, yeah, just an interesting point.
Well, and the moon and Dreamtime. There's like travel implications there. Or
what's up, Wizards, Wraps, and Minerals?
Hey.
Hey, Cheney.
What's up, Cheney?
Nice to see you here.
Still reeling a little bit from our conversation on Tuesday. Had a good time with you.
She did.
I was coming up with questions afterwards and all this shit. I was like, oh, man, I have more questions for Cheney.
I'm really glad you guys did that.
Yeah, me too.
So definitely check that out on the channel, guys, if you want to see Cheney and Michelle's conversation. It's worthwhile. All right. All right.
Oh.
Whatever sticks. Hello. I think we're getting towards the end here. All right, Branch. I think we're getting ready for you, dude.
Yeah, thanks for being patient.
Yeah, for sure.
He's been hanging out backstage for a little while here.
Totally. Okay, cool. Mr. Branch, how are you? You are currently muted. What's good?
Doing very well. Couldn't keep from spamming the chat, so I was like, well, I may as well hop on. So
yeah, I'm glad you did.
I didn't expect to talk about aliens, but right now the immigration issue is a big deal, and those are referred to as aliens, right? So while all this alien stuff's happening, the extraterrestrial stuff, that's happening simultaneously. And what the news often talks about are how they're bringing in new viruses and stuff like that. So there is this association with the germ theory there as well. And, if aliens were to show up from space, what would that imply too? Like biologically, would they have to fear us because of our germs, or us them, et cetera, et cetera? So it brings a lot of that into focus, I think. But also the influence of these celestial bodies. Like you're talking about the sun and how things kind of gravitated around it. So I often wonder, kind of like how a magnet has a field that we can kind of see when we have iron filings in it. I think that each of these celestial bodies kind of have a field, and then things just order themselves according to that influence that it has. So like each of these stars have one, the planets all have one, the sun has one, the moon, et cetera, et cetera. We as individuals even have influence, just like all they do. So I think that's interesting because influenza can sometimes translate to influence of the stars. And they name a lot of these strains after stars, like Arcturus and Eris was two of the more recent ones. So I would say the new one, probably if we unpacked it, because it just looks like letters and numbers right now, I'd say that it might relate to Virgo, just because we're moving into that season, you know.
Oh, interesting.
But,
right.
Yeah, and some of the other things you guys were talking about, for instance, the period for females is related to the moon, and then so this Apollo rocket phallus thing going to the moon for me had a big weave there with it almost seems incestuous, of course, but at the same time there's that union of the two feminine and masculine energies, and I think that's sometimes what we get as like the combination of Artemis's bow and Apollo's arrow. It almost has that it's usually related to destruction, which is kind of biblical in nature, but I often wonder if that was like a harbinger of the end times, you know, like maybe. 1969 is also 19 Cancer glyph. So again, very
good one, dude. That's great.
And you were talking earlier about how they cut the roots off these traditions, and I think the Christmas tree is a good example of that, because people do it and they don't even understand that that's not their culture, you know. So it's kind of been culturally appropriated, I think. And it reminded me of the story of the Donner Oak. Saint Boniface, when he was even evangelizing into that area, he cut down the Donner Oak. And so that community, imagine going into somebody's house and destroying their family Christmas tree that they may have inherited with all the ornaments and whatever else might be on it. Well, that's basically what St. Boniface did when he went into this community and cut down the Donner Oak. It was more like a communal Christmas tree rather than everybody having their own. They shared one. So cutting it down and destroying it like that really did, you know, what did that do to that community? Because when you brought that up, Michelle, it really made me think like, wow, you know, that was probably what every festival in town centered around and such, you know.
Right.
Totally.
Anyway.
Dude, excellent stuff, man. I really love your connection with the 69 being the Cancer glyph. And then, if I'm not mistaken, so the moon landing was, I saw 2 days, and I'm sure, obviously, it's really easy to verify, but it's either July 20th or July 21st,
right,
as the day that they landed on the moon. Which, if I'm not mistaken, that would be like the last day of Cancer season,
right?
And then they're on the moon, which the moon rules Cancer. So there's a heavy Cancerian sort of thing going on here. So I love that weave, man. That's awesome.
Well, and what did they say when they landed on the moon, allegedly? The eagle has landed. So I think
right.
Once again, we got almost like a family reunion. You know, you got Artemis, Apollo, and eagles a lot of times associated with Zeus. And so it also gets this northern association with Aquila. Apollo has that northern association with Hyperborea. So I think the northern symbolism is maybe even a bigger tent under which they all fit, you know, because a lot of times the stars is considered a canopy or a tent. And if the sun and the moon are, so that's the argument. You're like, is the sun closer than we think it is? The moon's under that tent. Is the sun under that tent too? So that to me would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. The other thing too, the eagle has landed. Good point, man. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and so that kind of fits with that, right?
Yeah, that would be the father of the two. So I didn't expect that to actually have some substance to it. But it also, all this reminded me of the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. We come from the land of the ice and snow, where the midnight sun and the hot springs flow. Again, immigrants. Yeah. And talking about driving your ships to new lands to conquer and stuff. So I always think of that song when immigration comes up.
Interesting,
You also
dude.
kind of,
Yeah, go for
sorry,
it.
I kept talking. It's just I kept taking notes. I was like, oh, I was getting overwhelmed. So you blew my mind earlier when you were talking about the pole symbolism, because I got to thinking about the square, compass, and the Bible sitting on the altar in the Masonic Lodge. They call those the three great lights in Masonry. And there's a throne in the north that always sits vacant. So you have 4 thrones, which are occupied by officers. The east is the worshipful master, and then you got his 2 officers in the west and the south. But in the north is always unoccupied. So it always gives me that north pole,
Wow.
the side where God sits, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. Whoa, that's really fascinating, dude. I didn't know that. 100%. There's even, I've heard people talk about empty throne symbolism and what that represents. And so sometimes there's certain movies where like they have an empty chair, but it's like emphasized. And it makes me wonder if they're kind of speaking to some of this stuff.
Well, that empty chairs also make me think of, sometimes they'll say if there's like empty chairs in like a abandoned house, like spirits can take up seat in the open chair.
Yes.
And I actually always, we don't have a kitchen table at the moment, but when we did have one, we would sometimes leave the chair like open, like, outward, so the cat could jump up onto the table.
Yeah.
And then I would always turn the chair so it was underneath the seat part was underneath the table, because I kept that in mind. And so I always think about that stuff, like, because I think that there's something to it. For sure.
Right, totally. That's interesting. Okay, so real quick, Brandon, I see you hanging out in StreamYard. What's up, dude?
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah, and thanks for just hanging in there. And I just want to add on to something that Josh was saying. So I talked about this on a show with Slick and with Juan recently, and it appears as though this episode had to get heavily censored in order to make it on YouTube.
Okay.
So he put it on YouTube. It got taken down. He had to edit it, I don't know, once or twice or something like that. And so right now it's currently on Rumble, and I don't know if this portion of the conversation is actually going to make it on YouTube. But one of the things I said, we talked about Kenneth Grant, the tunnels of Set, the polar tradition, and all this other stuff, right? And it's interesting because I've heard people mention this before, but Longo has mentioned it on Old World Florida, but just the words Aryan and alien, and how both of these words are related to each other and they're very charged. And so he reminded me of this sort of correspondence between alien and Aryan. And I just have to say, I don't know if I'm going to completely unpack this right now, but I believe that northern symbolism, polar symbolism, unlocks a great deal of understanding with the Aryan side of things and the alien side of things. And that the idea behind both ETs and Aryans is an Arctic origin. There's a northern correspondence with both. So when you really dive into Kenneth Grant, the tunnels of Set, all that stuff, they basically say that ETs are coming from a different universe. He refers to it as Universe B. And the way they know that is because they've astral traveled to these places. And the way you get there is via the hidden Sephiroth, which represents the root side or the night side of the Tree of Life. It's how you access the Tree of Death, the Klipothic tree, and that hidden Sephiroth, Doth, corresponds with the north. So they look at the preeminent astral gateway to go to other domains, other frequencies, other spheres of existence. They look at that opening at the north. So what they're saying is that some entities come through via the north, and the whole Aryan thing is it all goes back to an Arctic origin. So whether you're talking about white northern Aryans or you're talking about like Indian Aryans or whatever, they both revere the swastika and they both have this idea of coming from the Arctic, basically.
Yeah.
So I just think, as always, that the polar symbolism kind of like it unlocks so much stuff. It just continues to blow my mind.
Yeah.
So we might be talking about Hyperboreans in more than one sense. You know what I mean?
I actually had a note here that I never got to that was Sapporo and Quillipot and how it related to the the Axis Mundi, the tree itself that we see as the Axis Mundi, is the Separate-Quillipod.
Excuse me, the what?
So the Separate-Quillipod is the world tree. It just blew my mind when you were talking about all this. It's like, oh, it's the same thing. So really, the Christmas tree is the Separate because it's had the roots cut off. The Quillipod are the roots.
Ooh.
Interesting.
That's really, really intriguing, dude.
So I appreciate that, man. I didn't expect all this from the moon weave.
I know.
But,
right. For sure. Hey, dude, do you mind hanging out while I bring Brandon into the mix?
Absolutely. I love Brandon.
Nice, dude. Yeah, he's solid.
Sweet.
All right, Brandon. What's up, buddy?
Hey,
what's up?
Thanks for all the love. I really appreciate it. Amazing.
Oh, yeah, you got it, man.
Of course. Welcome to last Thursday.
What's up, Josh? Josh, myself, and Benjamin Balderson did a live stream about Dune, the Dune universe, so you can check it out on my channel. But that was really a lot of fun. And what I wanted to say about the moon, it's funny because you were talking about TV, and there's a show that predates the moon landings called The Honeymooners. And every week you got to see Ralph Cramden talk about how he's going to slug his wife to the moon, like to the moon, Alice. And then they would show the moon, right?
Yeah, yes. I thought of that phrase today, actually.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think it's so funny how India gave us all this, I guess you could call it footage or whatever, right? And then they're saying, oh, we went to the moon. And like you guys were saying how it's heating up again with covering your smiling face and other variants and stuff. And I wanted to point out, I talked about this on our show, but 3/11/2020 was the date that they shut everything down. And it was exactly 222 months from another date in September in 2001. I'm sure you guys are familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
This year is exactly 22 years. So I'm really thinking that something, the PSYOP season is going to be, especially next month, is probably going to be like on full blast. Again, not like people like us are really worried about it. I kind of think it just makes for good comedy. That's kind of what I use it for these days. But It really seems like they're headed to amp things up some more. It's like they gave us the summer off a little bit, and now it's like we're back to it. Everyone's back to school. We're back to PSYOP season.
Moon is on a 19-year cycle. It's called a metonic cycle. So I've always wondered if there's an association there with COVID, 19. Because all this really started around 2001, right? So 2021 would have been the 20th year, I think, anniversary.
But yeah, that's a good point, man. I would not be surprised if PSYOP season is upon us, as you're saying, for sure.
Yeah.
And it seems as though there's a guy, I'm spacing on his name.
I'm spacing too, but I thought about him already. Lennon Honor.
Yeah, this guy named Lennon Honor, he did this really cool sort of breakdown. And basically, he pretty much shows that since 9/11, they actually like to increase the PSYOPs in the fall.
Yeah, that's when they ramp everything up.
It's this cyclical sort of thing, and it's kind of almost like a, I don't know, it's his programming sort of angle, I guess.
Right.
So anyways, it lines up with that as well.
Be the fall of man, right? I think maybe the Adam and Eve story is when fall began. It's like that moment.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's
and if
that's very
think of all the programming in society that gets us ready for the fall, right? I mean, not only pumpkin spice, but everybody going back to school, people going back to work. It's like a time to get serious again after we've had our fun,
Dude, when I was kayaking last Sunday, I always feel like I'm in school because I'm learning from all the animals, because augury is at a high point right now because everything's alive. Well, there were so many schools of fish swimming around me. And so I just kept reminding myself, I'm in school. And this is when everybody's returning to school. It's quite literally when there's schools of fish flowing through the streams. So for me, I made that connection just this last weekend. So when you brought up school, I thought I'd mention it.
Nice. No, I love it, dude. Yeah, you got me thinking because of 2001. 2001: A Space Odyssey, and 2001: A Space Odyssey's role in this whole entire thing, I know that's kind of been done many times over.
Yeah, but it's very relevant.
It's incredibly relevant, and it's fascinating that was sort of the deal, is that he was more than likely filming this this film, and they go to the moon first, right? I mean, it makes sense that you would go to the moon first before you go to other places or whatever. But the idea in the film was that they were going to end up in Saturn.
Yeah.
They were going to go all the way to Saturn. So under the traditional planetary system, Saturn would be like the end of the line, but instead they switched it to Jupiter, which I've made the case that I think that's an interesting switch, because in the book it's Saturn, but in the film it's Jupiter. And so they're kind of stunting the progress to complete the cycle. In a way, like going all the way to Saturn would complete the cycle. You're going all the way to the end of the line, but apparently what's been said is that the rings of Saturn were too hard to pull off, and so they decided to go with Jupiter. Right.
That's
but I mean,
cool.
It's incredible that they released it in '68. It was incredibly expensive, meticulously done.
Yeah.
And then a year later you have the moon landing. So obviously just getting people ready, priming the pump, before the big show.
Right. And most people who look into this stuff, speculate that Kubrick was the man behind the camera on the hoax moon landing, perhaps.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
his people. I mean,
or one of his people. He at least had a hand in it.
Yeah, he engineered it, it seems like.
Right.
More than likely. And then the tagline, too, for the film was the ultimate trip. So they're kind of seeding that into the consciousness, too. It's like, this is the ultimate trip. The moon landing is going to be the ultimate trip. This is what you've always wanted. This is what, your comic books and, your sci-fi novels and stuff. It's like, this is a big deal,
Right.
We're promising you a transhuman sort of future, I think, is a lot of what's being said.
Yeah.
So anyway, can't underestimate that. Also, too, I pulled this out. So this is Moonchild by Aleister Crowley here, right? And so you see, it's kind of interesting that, just the cover. I don't know if this was the original cover or not, but you see this child, right, with the Star of David sort of hexagram symbol, and then also the moon above its head. And so it's almost just kind of like, I think symbolically it can kind of be said that we are all children of the moon. This kind of gets back into the Babylonian belief that we come through the gateway of man, which is Cancer, and then we exit through the gateway of the gods, which is Capricorn. Right, so we come through the moon symbolically. Perhaps we leave through Saturn, right? Or through the Earth, symbolically related to Saturn. But this title, Moonchild, and kind of creating a here it says Moonchild, son of the lunar spirit. It's almost just kind of like they're seeding that into the consciousness as well. They're kind of creating moon children out of all of us,
right?
In a way.
Damn.
Remember we saw that Tang commercial last night?
Yeah. They're like associating, if you drink Tang, you're going to like turn into an astronaut. So they're like promoting that children drink Tang. And this kid is like drinking his Tang, and then he kind of, he gets a astronaut suit on, and then he's bouncing around his house, but it turns into the moon, and it's like, drink Tang for, whatever. It's very 1960s.
Didn't they even say that the astronauts drink Tang?
Yes. And that was a whole thing, is that they had Tang. That was like one of the moon drinks or the space drinks or whatever. And then I did see, we watched the video yesterday where some guy was going through the, some of the synchronicities of having Kubrick being behind the moon landing, and they're like pointing out that there's Tang in The Shining when they're in the food stock room, and little things like that, whether or not that is a real connection or whatever, who knows, but it's interesting.
Well, and Danny's wearing an Apollo 11 little sweater.
So there's a few things in The Shining that are always pointed out that kind of correlate to this too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely.
And we have a Mr. Tippy Canoe, Kyle, that just popped up.
Yeah, Branch, if you want to say something, go for it.
I'll just mention a couple things and hop off. I'm happy that it's getting so, it's a party, man. So there's also the Seder meal for the Jewish Seder meal. There's always an empty chair sat there too, and I think that's for the king, like the Moshiach, the Messiah.
Interesting.
And also, there's theories that the Jews themselves are aliens. Even the Orthodox Jews will say that a lot of times. They. So anyway, oh, and one last thing, we call these the shots. We call them boosters, and rockets use boosters whenever they're launching. So there's again their influence. Stars. Anyway, I'm gonna hop off. I'll be in the chat.
All right, man. I'll check you later.
Bye, Joshua. Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle was talking about the rocket looking like a needle. What's up, Brandon?
Yeah, I was gonna say that blew my mind, Josh, with the booster thing, because I remember when I was a kid and they're like, you gotta go get your boosters, and I would kind of be excited because I guess I correlated it with the whole booster thing because I was totally into space and like the space camp movies and all that stuff.
Right.
That leads me to the other thing I wanted to bring up with you guys is the Challenger space shuttle whole debacle, because I remember, I think I was in 3rd grade at the time or something. I'm 47 now, so however that works out. But they wheeled the TV into our classroom, which, like, you know, I was in this small Catholic school and I didn't even know we had a TV, and they wheeled it in. And other people that I talked to that are around the same age as me in this area, especially I'm in Connecticut, but in the Northeast, you know, a friend of mine from Rhode Island, same thing. They're like, they just wheel this TV in and they're like, wow, we're going to watch a space shuttle. And then it just explodes in front of everybody after they told us that there was a teacher on board. So it just reminds me of kind of like a trauma bonding experience or some kind of programming.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I'm sure you've seen the fact that some of those people are still around, right?
Yeah, that's what makes it even funnier. But the way that I go in the direction, I don't really get into like a victim status or narrative over it. I kind of think that some of these people, especially if they're quote unquote Masons, they're doing this great work or whatever. I think some of them are actually trying to wake people up with these hilarious stunts that they pull. Because, you know, especially this India thing with the moon, or even the whole Corona thing, if you really look at it, it's so easy. You just do like 5-10 minutes of research and you could just, you know, trash it all. So I really think like maybe these people, whoever they are actually trying to wake us up. Because if you ever tried to tell somebody the truth directly, they never want to accept it, right? But if you could, it's like doing comedy. You make it into a joke and then people laugh and then they slowly start to accept it. So I feel like there might be some of that going on.
Yeah.
No, totally. I think about that on occasion for sure. You want to hang out for a bit while we welcome Kyle into the mix?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know who Kyle
let's do
is,
it.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, they've interviewed
Oh, you guys
Kyle.
have been. Yeah. Not surprised. What's up, dude?
Yo, what's up, guys? Thanks
Hey,
for
Kyle.
having me. Thanks for having me. What's up, Brandon?
Hey, what's going on? I thought I was the one that's supposed to look like Jesus tonight. What's going on?
Nice.
We've been blessed. We have 2.
Yeah, right.
Have you ever seen that show American Gods? There's the one time that they're like all hanging out at this party or something like that, and all the gods are getting together, and there's like all these different versions of Jesus. So there's like one Odin and one Ostera, but then there's like 35 Jesuses for all the different ways that people think about Jesus. So, yeah.
I've never seen it, but people have brought it up to me multiple times. I really got to check it out. People have said it would be right up my alley.
Yeah, it is cool. Yeah, I was like, oh man, that's kind of the thunder I was thinking about. Joshua's booster comment. I was thinking about that too. But how it's like just activating that Overton window and all the different ways of our subconscious right now with booster rockets and booster shots and get your booster. And if it wasn't for the boosters, they wouldn't have got there. And so last night we went out to eat, and my son graduated from being he's 1.5 years old. He graduated from being in like the little chair that we roll up to the table at a restaurant to a booster chair. But he wasn't having any of that. Like, he didn't want to sit in the booster chair at all. He wasn't going to sit in the booster chair. I just wanted to climb around the booth and like eat the window and stuff like that. And it was great. It was like, yeah, let's get this boy some population of his terrain right now. All these microbes all over the window and the booth and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, the booster thing. I never considered that. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So it's just a word that's brought up to a child who is just learning how to speak. The booster shot, booster. And then I'm old enough to remember because I was in first grade when the Challenger exploded, and I definitely remember the wheels, the TV strapped down with a like strap, like wheel it in. Okay, there's your shared trauma. Wheel it back out again, and I was like, "What the heck just happened?"
Right. Yeah, the big one for me that was 9/11.
Yeah, same here. Because I remember being in school and they wheeled it in, and everybody had a TV in the room, and then everybody walked out from whatever hour it was and was like, "What just happened? Holy shit!"
Right.
You have a school full of high schoolers that are just like, "What the fuck just happened here?"
Yeah, no, exactly.
Or whatever school you were in. I was in high school, so were you, but yeah.
Right.
That was nuts.
Totally.
It's crazy in 2020, they brought the PSYOP right to every school. Instead of having on a screen, it was in your school, right? Like you either couldn't go or you had to cover your face.
Totally.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a really good point.
Yeah, there's like a history of that coming just right down to the public education, just from the very young age, bonding people into that experience. It's almost like it's becoming more and more sophisticated now as a weapon,
Right. So, Kyle, were you ever like a big sci-fi person kind of growing up or anything like that? Did you ever have a place in your heart for that kind of material, or not so much?
I mean, I guess I liked fantasy more, I guess. And I liked space. I liked Star Trek, and I liked Star Wars, and I liked that kind of stuff, but not really. I don't know. I don't have this idolatry aspect for it, so it's always been pretty easy for me to call nonsense on it, especially because or at least the moon, in my opinion, but also because I could see how attached people are to it in the same way that people would be attached to a comic book or a sci-fi book or a graphic novel or something like that. Like, dude, that novel sucks. Like Watchmen sucks or whatever. And then, how dare you say that? And like, yeah, dude, I don't believe the moon. Like, same reaction,
Right. It's a really funny thing. I brought this up before, but I think it's worth just kind of bringing up again. We have a handful of old school, like, conspiracy theorist friends, right? And so one of our favorites, rest in peace, Bud, he was a really good one. And he gave us so much material to read, books upon books and binders and newspapers and all sorts of different things. But one of the things that he always held on to was this idea of going to Mars. And so he would talk about Mars very much in a nostalgic sort of way. And he would always say that redheads are from Mars. And he would just bring up Mars all the time. And one day, because he would always talk about we're going to Mars, it's just like we're preparing to go to Mars. So any sort of little headline out there about private space flights to the moon or to Mars would really get him going. It would make him very, very excited. And I had already broken my programming with all this stuff by the time we became friends with him. But I'm always down to humor him and talk to him and whatever. But then one day after one of his Mars sort of things, I asked him, I'm like, Bud, how long have you thought that we were going to Mars? And he goes, oh, well, since I was a kid. He goes, since I was a kid, I've been told that we're going to Mars. We're going to colonize Mars. It's been a dream of mine since my childhood. And he was like a big comic book guy. So he just like never let go of it. So it's just kind of interesting to see that his whole entire life, all the way up until his late 70s, he was rooting for the colonization of Mars.
Right.
Basically. So I don't know. There's something kind of tragic about it too.
Yeah, there is something tragic about it. It's sad because they're still plugging that. They're still plugging it for people.
They're still dangling that carrot.
And now you're going to have a whole new generation of children, just like with Bud.
Yeah.
Who are going to be wishing for it and waiting for it and longing for it to never come.
Right.
And if it does come, it'll be a hoax event, or it'll be like an Elon Musk sort of, we sent a fucking Tesla into space today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look, we've started to build on Mars, and they're going to have, some desert footage for us or something.
Right. Well, they're saying go ahead.
What do you guys think about this idea that, all right, just like going off of the idea that, here we are living in this loosh factory, there's the Gnostic, demiurge and stuff like that. That's not a worldview that I subscribe to, but a lot of people, they reach that point and they think like, all right, the only way to go is to get out. And what if that, like, the possibility of Mars and going there is actually true, but not in the sense that our physical body goes there, but it's like a trap, a soul trap, a consciousness trap, and it's like a lesser realm or a demonic realm where I don't know, a soul can be feasted upon for a long time or something like that. So by, I don't know, thinking that you're going somewhere and at the point to all the way up to the point of your death or something like that, it actually is possible that you're given a ticket to entry at this point, and you might, I don't know, I'm just imagining the possibility of being like somebody who's like, finally, like, I can go, and you go and doors close behind your soul or something like that, and it's not what you think it is. It's the Mars of the myth. It's the war god. It's the blood. It's the iron. It is, and maybe it is there. Maybe it's that light that's in the sky, and it's a different realm. That just popped into my head when I was thinking about when you were talking about that. So, it's not like I've thought about that before, but I think it's pretty. I think it's interesting for our souls to go into different places, and I think that one of the possibilities of opening up our consciousness to space travel as it's projected is for the purpose of opening up portals of demonic influence, to be abiding here in our consciousness and manipulating our consciousness into a different pen, following a different shepherd in the new life or something like that.
Yeah, no, dude, I think that's very interesting. One of the things, I have to credit a guy named Martin Kenny for kind of introducing me to this idea, but he has a similar sort of thing. Not so much the soul entrapment kind of thing, but the idea that when NASA's talking about going to Mars, they are talking about a real energetic sphere or a real frequency, and that it may be this ringland sort of system. That's how he looks at it. And he thinks that we live in a ringland system, that in this ringland, the sun and the moon are the preeminent, planets here. On the ringland system just beyond us, it's Venus and Mars, and then the ringland beyond that, it's Jupiter and Saturn. And that Saturn acts as kind of like the feminine aspect, more of like the moon. Jupiter acts as kind of like the solar aspect, with the ringland system where Venus and Mars are in play and they are the main planets. Mars would obviously be more of the masculine aspect. Venus would be the feminine. So when they're talking about going to Mars, they're actually talking about going to a ringland that corresponds with Mars. And that we're literally just talking about kind of like spheres, spheres within spheres sort of thing, or ringlands within ringlands sort of thing. So yeah, you might be right that it could work that way somehow.
There's like the public aspect where they're like, oh no, we got a helicopter, it's already there, like check it out, ooh, there's a video of a helicopter. But really what they're studying is some this is Jack Parsons is like, pretty classic satanic influenced dude that they're actually talking about. What you're mentioning here is just like going or using the help of what we could call satanic entities, but who knows what's going on, but yeah, I think that is pretty interesting, possible.
No, I think that's all really interesting stuff to kind of consider, because it also kind of plays into the idea that actually they seed out more real information than not, but it's whether or not you know how to read between the lines and if you know how to decode things.
Right.
So that some of these headlines, they're actually plainly kind of telling you in a way, but you just don't know, you don't have the decoder ring to actually understand what they're talking about. But to people in the know, they understand clearly what's being discussed here and what's being put out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's their cryptography skills, are obviously we're not privy to kind of understanding exactly what they're saying, but I like it, dude. That's very fascinating. I could totally see something along those lines. So then when they're saying that we're going to the moon, what do you think is being implied there, I guess?
Good question.
Either of you guys? If you're looking at it through this sort of lens.
I could jump in really quickly. I think because people in the society, we have a lot of wounds, and we have our dark side. People talk about like having a dark night of the soul, and I think a lot of people don't want to face that. I know this from fact, from going through it and how I used to be to compare to how I am now. So I think that if people are told that they're going to get a chance to go to the moon physically, then they're like, oh, I don't have to do it spiritually or emotionally. Then, sign me up. I could just go there physically and then everything's fine. So I don't have to do the work. I don't have to face the truth or whatever it is about my own behavior. So I think that would be one of the aspects for sure.
Yeah, that's a great thought, because then it goes back to the heliocentric versus geocentric that we were talking about. Like always external, always escaping instead of going within and doing that dark night of the soul, dark shadow work, whatever you want to talk about. Because yeah, as you said, that shit's hard to do. And it's like a lifetime. It can be multiple lifetimes of work to do all that kind of stuff. So I think any kind of escapism for a lot of people, they will jump on board as quickly as possible.
That's interesting that this is coming up too, because we watched some of this moon landing footage and they were showing the crowds that were waiting for the rocket to launch, right? And the broadcaster was saying that this is a Roman circus.
Oh, that's right.
He was saying there's so many people around. It's so chaotic. This is a Roman circus. It's been compared to a Roman circus. And I'm like, they're like telling you right there, this is a bread and circus event.
Right, yeah.
For distraction, as you're saying, Brandon.
That's an awesome point. The word escapism, these are words that relate to Pisces, and Pisces is the moon card in tarot as well. And so and then in the Steiner cosmology, the moon is the sphere of influence of the astral body, which is like our emotional body. So there's all this connection with like the emotional escapism, or seeing. Brandon just made an excellent point. Like, here's an example. The person in your life, or maybe even you previously in your life or currently, that's like, oh, I got to get out of this town. This town is just causing me problems. And then you move to the next town or something like that. And it's the same problems again. And they keep manifesting. Okay, I got to get a new job, got to get a new girlfriend, whatever. And it just like that pattern just keeps continuing, instead of like what Michelle was mentioning, just looking within and doing that work within. And the first sphere of influence to work would be that emotional lunar influence, that the moon influence, and then going out from there into the mind and into other parts of the subconscious as well, at least according to a Steiner kind of cosmology. But that's something that resonates with me. It resonates with me as like the first work to do is the emotional, and that is also the thing that maybe in this day and age, especially in the boomer generation, was something that was just like, I don't want to have anything to do with being in touch with my emotional body. Don't have anything to do with that kind of work. Let's let three Freemasons do it for me. And we did it. We all did it. Clap, 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 wave the flag. Did you see in the India video where they're like everyone's clapping and the president is just like waving his dinky little flag? It's so embarrassing. It
is.
What you guys do? And that's the thing. It's like nobody there seems like they have. They're connected to their physical work. They're really hyper focused, but maybe at the expense of I'm just imagining the stories that are in that room with like people's families and the sacrifices that they made in order to see what's on screen as real and true, and like the things that we have to actually, like, it's a habit. It's habits that we put ourselves into. And alternatively, going to the moon in the other direction, in the direction that we're talking about here, is going the opposite way, looking at our patterns and our habits of our emotional body, how they're affected with other people, our subconscious mind, our astral body, all that type of stuff, and doing that internal work, especially because I'm also of the opinion that our central pole is a fractal representation of the central pillar of this realm, which is including all things. I don't think that there's a rock in the sky. But I do think that's there for us to ponder these types of spheres of influence, so to speak. That's such a great question.
Excellent, dude. I'm so glad you're bringing all this stuff up. Because one of the things to me that I think about a lot, actually, especially when I'm doing tarot readings and things like that, and I have this fascination with like on the street sort of interviews, street people interviews, prostitution, sort of documentaries, and like John's being interviewed and like what gets them off and why do they do this and whatever, like seedy stuff.
And he always wants to stop at like the homeless sections of the city.
Wherever we're traveling.
Like there's like a dark alley with a bunch of...
Hey, let's go
he's
there.
like, let's walk down there. I'm like, yeah, I think we should wait and go to the next block.
Totally. And so anyway, so I've always been attracted to like the seedier side of things, the grittier side of things. And there's just so much content out there now on YouTube where like real people who are really struggling, just like they're bearing all, and they're talking about their story and all this other stuff on YouTube and whatever. Soft White Underbelly comes to mind if people know that channel. And so I've watched many a Soft White Underbelly videos. But the thing that always is brought up is mental health. Right. And so people talk about mental health and you need to get your mental health right. And you need to see a therapist or psychologist or whatever. And I just, after hearing the mental words so many times, I'm just thinking, I'm like, when I hear some of these people talk, I don't get the read that they're actually suffering from a mental issue as they are so much an emotional issue.
Yeah.
That it actually has more to do with their heart and heartstrings, and it has more to do probably with unintegrated sort of shadow work and trauma and things like that. And that cognitively they're kind of there, not all of them, but cognitively a lot of these people are there, but it's their heart that needs work. It's the emotional side of things that needs work. And so kind of like what you're saying, it's just like, it seems like this seems to be like a primary way that we filter everything through.
Yeah. And I think to your point with that, which I remember when you brought this up a couple years ago, and to me, it felt like an epiphany moment when you brought this up for me. But I think that's one of the reasons why these people get trapped in drugs and they use substances to escape, because it's more of an emotional problem. Because most people who have imbibed in something at some point in their life have maybe used it to escape. I know I have. I can admit that I've done that with things before. And so I think that when you're in emotional turmoil, it's really nice to be able to, nice in quotes, to have a few beers and put that fuzzy warm blanket over all that sadness that you have. And it's more of an emotional issue over a mental issue. And I think like that helps to make sense with the substance abuse that's so rampant with this kind of stuff too.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So anyway.
Exactly. And then the other thing, speaking of kind of seedy stuff or whatever, I was kind of like, India is a place where it really tests your limits.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to test your humanity, depending on where you go. It's going to test your humanity. It's going to test your sort of threshold to bear witness to like levels of poverty that you have never been exposed to, things like that. And so to think the thing I thought of when we were watching the India moon landing footage was just the fact that no matter where they're at in this country, they are all going to step foot outside of whatever building or facility or campus that they're at. And they're going to be walking all over piss and shit and poverty beyond imagination.
Right.
And just like piles of trash all over the place and dilapidated buildings and, all that kind of stuff. It's like the infrastructure there is absolutely horrendous, and, but I love it there. It was, I don't know. It's one of the favorite places I've ever been to before, And so that was an interesting sort of contrast to know what it's like there in actuality and to think that these guys are building like rockets that are actually going and landing on the moon and then to be propagandizing all of their people
right.
that they landed, and then just to kind of consider the conditions of the country at large. I'm like, where are the priorities here?
I was going to say bigger fish to fry.
Right. So, Kyle, what do you think about that? The mental health versus emotional health thing that I brought up.
Yeah, I think it's huge because we have all of these drugs and pharmaceutical. It's like branded to not pay attention to to people's emotional health. It's almost like people are incentivized to just call it a mental health issue, mental health awareness, blah blah blah, and there's all this drugs and stuff like that to work on that, and all it does is really suppress the emotional functions anyway, so that somebody doesn't. So like, let's just say an antidepressant, it's billed as this like mental health drug or something like that, but what it's really doing is making it. I've never taken one, so I don't know, and I don't mean any offense to anybody that's listening that has, but I guess in my understanding, it makes it so that people don't feel the same way. They don't feel like happy or sad or anything, just kind of like steady. Um, and so yeah, I think that is, to me, that's a hint that that's really the target that we're over when we're talking about all of this stuff, is that it's like the emotional health. Because I know in my work that that herbs can really touch on emotional triggers for people, and with body work and with work that like biofield tuning and the things that like Chance and Eileen do and things like that, um, cranial sacral stuff. I've had massages before where somebody just touches me in one spot, and all of a sudden, flooding up to the surface is a memory of being hit by a pitch, while I'm playing little league baseball, and my
Wow.
dad told me to stand in there, and having all of this, confusion about like the parent, protector, and hustle up kid, and all this pressure and stuff. And it was like a huge relief to let that come up and to feel it. But it was an emotional connection. It was not and it was dictating my mind to tell my body how to hold its tension or something like that. So I definitely think that it's very important, and it is, to me, probably the last filter before our physical body. That's my opinion, at least.
I see. Yeah, that's very interesting, dude. Thanks for sharing that. I think one of the things is that our emotions, are a connection to what I've read recently as to our spirit impulse. So literally, via our emotions, via our heart, which has a connection, right, with toroidal symbolism and everything else. And it seems as though that our hearts really truly are a gateway to understanding the spirit realm. And so it's a deep, deep, deep well. And so that's why the moon, to me, is very mysterious. I think that it aligns very nicely with the primordial sort of feminine, with chaos or darkness, the shadow, all of these different types of things. And so because of that, we can cry and we can have emotions that we logically don't understand.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's like, where is this coming from?
Right.
Where is this coming from? Why am I feeling moved right now? And it's just, it's part of a song, or you see something or read something, or a memory comes up or whatever. And so to me, the shift from emotional to mental, and kind of focusing it all on the mental, it kind of implies that you can outthink your problems.
Right.
That it's all about just kind of trying to create logic out of your life. And it's trying to make sense out of things, of like, okay, well, if I just think about this problem long enough, I can avoid feeling actual real emotions, which are tough to feel, and because it's so mysterious, people don't know, I think, a lot of times what's actually going on with you emotionally. I would say that for me, it took a long time to realize that you can allow emotions to flow instead of being worried about where they're coming from or what's actually being brought up or whatever.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people, they want to do what you're saying, is that they want to numb it. They want to numb having those emotional sort of feelings, I think. And they want to think that their problems lie all up here. So then you could talk to a shrink, and a lot of these people too, I know there's good doctors out there and therapists and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like I've seen a lot of examples where the person isn't encouraging them to actually change any of their actions or lifestyle habits or anything like that.
Right.
They're trying to just get them to think through the problem, I guess, and recall lots of things. But it seems like they don't even really I don't know. I can't say for all of these people, but it seems like they don't necessarily even want to have like any emotional sort of breakthroughs, more logical, mental, cerebral sort of breakthroughs or whatever. And so I've just found that a lot of people, they stuff their emotions and they think that they can just literally think their way through life without actually having to feel it.
Right. And then wonder why things don't work out, or wonder why they're always struggling or never happy, or, you know, the plethora of other things that come along when you are stuffing things and trying to just send everything to the mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. I think one of the other crimes, by the way, with this whole moon landing business is that the moon, which depending on your culture is either deeply feminine or masculine, you know, I'm meeting more and more people who see the moon as masculine, which I think is very interesting, you know, but generally when I wake up and if I ever think about the moon, I guess, I think of it as being feminine in nature. But one of the other crimes is that they've materialized something that can't be physical, in my opinion. You know, I agree. I don't think it's like an actual rock out in outer space. It might look like that. It might have the features of that, but I can't really say because I'm never going to actually be able to touch base, right? But they've materialized the spirit realm. And so when I look into the night sky, I just often think, I'm like, are we actually just looking at the spirit realm here?
I would say, yeah. I would confidently say yes, but I can't 100% confirm.
So are we looking at the spirit realm? Are we looking at the underworld, or whatever you want to say? The heavens is another word I always use.
Right.
And so they've made that stuff physical and actual the same way this desk is physical, or the same way that rock is sort of physical. And so I think that's potentially another one of those inversions that they've done, you know.
That's a great thought.
So it's always about cutting you off, I think, from the mysteries in a lot of ways, and from the divine feminine.
And as you said in the beginning, cutting you off from the roots.
Right.
You know, which has kind of been a running theme through the conversation of cutting the roots. And when the roots are gone, you know, we know what happens. A lot of times there's death, but there's also rebirth sometimes depending on the plant.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's like the good and the bad and with that too.
Totally. So any hanging chads here? Any thoughts you guys want to get off your chest? I do have some notes that I might cruise through and see what all I've left on the table. But if you guys have any thing to add here, feel free.
I was actually going to get out of here. You guys, the last thing I wanted to say was, could it be that these lights we see in the sky are the projector of what's going on here on the Earth? Maybe. But I just wanted to get out of here, leave you guys with something to ponder. And it was good to talk to you too, Kyle. And I will see you guys. And thanks for letting me talk. I had a great time.
Man. You got it. Thanks for hanging out, dude.
Thanks for coming. Congrats again on the 100th episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, guys, check out the Oversharing Show. My website is morelawsmoreproblems.com. Click on the Oversharing tab and check out the show. Everyone on the screen has been on the show, so check it out. See you guys.
That's true. Yeah, nice, dude.
Nice.
Awesome, man. Take care.
Later.
Yeah, dude. I'll get out of here too. I just wanted to say, you were bringing up something about the emotion. Just going back again to the emotional mental picture, is that with the emotional picture, there's less room for the victim consciousness. Like we have to own that, right? Like we have to own that. And so the allegory of the moon, and it's not, it's not this world. We're just I'm just a monkey on a spinning ball flying through a vacuum. And there's no, when you have your feet on a solid surface, you have an understanding. When you have a firm standing of your worldview, and I don't need to be able to know everything is going on outside to at least know that my foundation is firm, and still ponder the mysteries above, and also the mysteries within the emotional body, and take credit for my vulnerabilities, where I've been hurt, how I can mend that through my healing process, instead of asking the government or some white coat dude to fix it for me, or give me a place of escape, whether it's the moon or a sci-fi book or a pill in an orange bottle. And and so all of that I think is just baked into this whole spell with the moon landing. And the other thing too that you brought up too is just the the assault that it had as almost like an assault on a spiritual entity in the sky, and turned it into a physical thing, like a ritual assault with a phallic shaped, on landing and penetrating this thing, and we did it and stick the flag in, and all of this, penetration of a sacred body, whether it's masculine or feminine. It's all of that's there, but it's not something that it's on the surface. It's just for whatever reason, not everyone is seeing that.
Excellent, dude.
But that's all I wanted to say. I think that's all of this stuff about the moon really brings that up to me. Just exploring emotionally, exploring your own connection to the moon and the way that it can, like a tide, when it's going around your zodiac, trigger parts of your natal sign. And for me, it lights up. I have an Aries moon, so whenever the moon goes around, I always get a little bit more like antsy, and that's my tide. That's my high tide. And I'm like, just wait for another day, and I don't have to buy the thing. And I'm like, I gotta get this $1,000 program. And like the next day, I'm like, who cares? I'm like, that's my Aries moon. So we have our physical tides that I think are encoding our personal tides that we have within ourselves. It's all fractal to me. I see it. It's really beautiful, and it's a great story for y'all to talk about and break down these spells. And I just want to say, it's so nice hanging out with you guys. Thanks for having calls, and I love the show. So I'm gonna drop off now and let y'all go on. But thanks, y'all.
Hell yeah, dude. Thanks for hanging out, dude.
Yeah,
much appreciated. Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, nice hanging with you too, Kyle. Thanks for calling in.
Right on.
Awesome. All right. Check you later.
Later.
I have to add on, or real quick, go for it if you have something to say.
Well, I just have something to say. The idea of all the penetration and the this and the that, and it's all forceful. It's all forced penetration. It's not natural. Do you know what I mean?
It's invasive.
It's invasive. So what is forceful penetration? That's like we're kind of simulating a rape in some sort of way. Right. So it's like, that's what I thought of when he brought that up, because that's a really good point of thinking about it. I know we talked about the penetration from the get-go, but the way he explained it, that's what it made me think of just like, oh shit. And it's all just being forced. It's being forced upon us. It's being forced into the networks and the televisions and this and that. It's like being forced down our throats. And we're just meant to and expected to swallow it and believe it and think that this is okay and this is what's happening, and no, they're not lying to us or anything else. So man, great points all around. Thank you to everybody who called in too. That's freaking awesome. I'm really loving that we opened up the lines.
Oh my God. We got high quality people calling in.
Of course. And it's just like, this is awesome. So last Thursday with Collins, yeah, love it.
It's a game changer.
Game changer. But yeah, on to your point.
Okay, two quick things. One, Ingo Swann is a well-known remote viewer. And so I read his book called Penetration. And it's about bases on the moon.
Whoa,
so
really?
Yeah, because I think that they wanted to penetrate the moon psychically on a remote viewing sort of level to discern what the hell is going on the moon, if I recall correctly. And it's about extraterrestrial stuff and moon base type stuff. So anyways, as soon as he was talking about penetration of the moon, I thought about penetration. And I'm pretty sure that the artwork for the book cover is like a moon landing sort of ET kind of thing or whatever. And I know the moon has a big part to play with the book. And so anyways, so it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. The other thing regarding penetration, the sword and how the sword penetrates and the sword severs and the sword cuts. It breaks things down. This is in contrast to the cup. Right. And so the cup is holistic. It brings things together. It's more unifying. And so we're talking about the difference between the sword, which is more mental, and then the cup, which is more heart-based,
right?
Which is more emotional. So so even with your mind, there is more of a projection, I think, kind of component going on versus reception sort of element.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect here with that elemental sort of shift between heart and head, right? Your emotional sort of state versus your mental sort of state. And so mental symbolism is way more in line with air, with swords, with science, with analyzing things, and all kinds of stuff. So, and then just think about the sword, how the sword is phallic, and it's it's just like a phallus. So it's external, right? It's long, it's sharp, it's all these different types of things.
Right.
So anyway, so that's just one difference that as he was talking, I just felt like I wanted to bring that up.
Well, and the sword, and I thought about this earlier in the conversation, but the sword acts very much like the pole in the sense that, you can put the sword into the ground, or the sword in the stone is another thing that came to my mind when we first started talking about, the flagpole going down into the moon and all the penetration aspects. I thought of the sword in the stone.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost like unlocking something, and so symbolically, I think that they understand. I don't think I mean, I guess I can't say I know for sure, but pretty sure they understand that symbolism pretty well.
The sword is, and the stone is a central stone, in
my
opinion.
Right.
So the stone is like the Philosopher's Stone or the Lodestone, or by extension, Mount Meru. So I look at a lot of stone symbolism. Black stone is another one, the white stone. There's all this alchemical stuff regarding the stone. But I always see the stone as being a central sort of stone. That's what the symbolism implies to me. So the sword and the stone, it's a reference to the stone or the rock in the middle of
the village.
Yes, 100%. And then also it being symbolized as like a world axis sort of thing. And so to remove the sword from the stone, to me, it's just a sacred center world axis stuff, like
right,
all day long, in my opinion.
Right.
From what I can see.
Makes sense.
But we're at 2 hours here, past 2 hours, actually.
Yeah.
You want to land the ship?
I think we should land it.
Okay, let's check out the comments first, and then we can get to the credits, yeah?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, cool. This was fun, guys.
Yeah, this is awesome. I had a feeling this one would be...
We actually went into some directions I wasn't expecting, but I am here for it. I thought it was awesome.
No, me too. That's why I'm glad we did the call-ins, too, because it brings some variety as well.
Indeed it does. And like I said, we got some high-quality people, so thank you, Cage, Branch, Brandon, and Kyle. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
For sure. All right. Yeah, Sarah G saying here, I think it's a good point. The aliens, regarding the aliens, right? It keeps you chained in the idea of the dense physical plane, being the end all be all, green men and whatnot. Yeah. I see your point there for sure. And let's see here if there's anything else worth bringing up. Brandon says, did you guys also notice how deep fake the Prime Minister of India seemed in that landing on the moon video? I thought he legit looked like he was a video game character. Yeah, there was something very
awkward.
Yeah, and kind of like unnatural or something about all that.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Yeah, dude, much love, Brandon, for sure. Hope to see you back. I think we're probably just going to implement call-in lines from like here on out.
I think so.
It was awesome. It was fun.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Katrina. A couple years ago, I was researching the moon and found that there are numerous mining patents issued to many countries to mine the moon. Who owns the moon to hand out such licenses? Right.
That's a great question.
All right, dude. Yep, for sure, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle.
Awesome, guys. Well, this was fun.
Sweet.
Yeah. So once again, just going to back up here one slide. Thank you to all of our patrons. You guys are awesome. We mentioned all of you beforehand, but much love, much respect. Once again, if you guys want to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/thehealinghome. My Patreon is patreon.com/Symbolic Studies. Next week on The Healing Home, we're going to do a show together, or I'm going to make an appearance at least.
Yeah, we're going to do a show together. It was a to be determined, and we determined what that subject would be yesterday. And so we're going to talk about Virgo symbolism. And then I'm also going to go into vaginal health and women's health in general. I've actually been having not a lot, but I've had a handful of people recently reaching out to me with questions. I've had somebody ask me to come onto their show to talk about this subject. And, this is something that's always on my mind because I'm a lady, but also I'm always trying to help other ladies who have questions. So I'm constantly always kind of in these realms of figuring things out, sharing my experiences, and also sharing things that I've learned that helped me, and then hopefully will help other ladies. So next week on the Healing Home, that will be our topic. And Mario had brought it up, but it's very appropriate that all this is actually coming up during Virgo.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. So next week, come and hang out with us if you're interested in doing that sort of stuff and talking about Virgo and vaginal health and women's health. And
I think it's going to be a good one.
I think so, too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can do on our own to help ourselves, through situations that arise. And it's a big deal. Always. Like you were saying, it's really funny. One of the points you brought up is, in our society, how sexualized things are and how like sought after something like the vagina is, and the fact that it is basically like where life, it's part of the system that creates life.
Yeah.
And to know that it's not talked about that often,
or that it's the obtaining it and talking about it in like a sexual way, it's all fine and dandy,
right?
But as soon as there's a health issue involved or whatever, people get squeamish, or we can't talk about it, or even just menstruation.
Yeah, just in general, and so anyway, we're gonna talk about stuff.
Nice. Totally.
Next week.
For sure. Awesome. So your next full moon offering newsletter comes out on the 30th. So if you guys haven't signed up yet, definitely do that. She basically talks about her latest offerings, and then you kind of recap, some of the stuff that you did in the month prior.
Yeah,
with
totally.
Interviews and things like that. So michelleshealinghome.com is where you can go and sign up for that. But your last full moon offering was your fresh garden mugwort tincture.
Yes. So I've still got a couple left of the mugwort tincture. So if you want any mugwort for yourselves, let me know. You can email me, michelleshealinghome@gmail.com.
Totally. What's up, Vega? I'm glad you're here too.
Yeah, nice to have you.
And so these are your current offerings?
Yep. Up on the screen, you'll see the mugwort tincture and anointing oil set. I still have St. John's wort tincture and anointing oil sets as well. As you can see, I love anointing oils. I love oils in general. It's always been my go-to for a lot of medicine, and I think oils are a great vehicle to get medicine or remedies into the body. I'll be having some new remedies coming out with this new newsletter as well. You can also contact me if you want bulk orders for soap or salves, anything that I make. You could ask me if I make that in bulk, and we can go from there.
Indeed. And if you guys want to order something, you can message Michelle at michelleshealinghome@gmail or michelleshealinghome.com. Conversely, not utilized enough in my opinion, but you can call or text Michelle at 503-568-1569. I would say texting is probably preferred, or you can leave a voicemail.
Yes.
And then also, I did a presentation last week called The Lion and the Virgin, and I got into some of my research regarding lion symbolism, Leo, right, and how it relates to Virgo, the Virgin. And so that's available on my channel, both on the live feed and have like an edited video version on the main page there. And then obviously you already know about this because you're watching it right now, last Thursday. So we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. I can see. Oh, I'll just wrap that up real quick. We're probably going to do one on Woodstock.
Oh, we are doing one on Woodstock.
Yeah. So we'll see if it's this next one or maybe the following one.
Yeah.
But we have a special guest plan for that.
Yes.
Also, symbolicstudies.com if you guys are interested in readings or my design work or posters or study packets, anything like that. And that'll do it.
Yes.
So this was fun.
Yep. Thanks again for another successful stream, Bubba.
Yeah, you got it.
Yep. And to all of you, to everybody who was in the chat, everybody who called in, very grateful for y'all. Thank you so much.
100%. And you guys have a good weekend.
Yeah. We'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Later.
Bye.